Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to be giving you guys my thoughts on the brand new 2021 CBR600RR. A little backstory for those of you who do not know, I've owned a 2008 CBR600RR since 2015. I purchased the 2008 model because during my research I found that it was the best CBR600RR to ever be made. The 07 to 08 years yielded the most horsepower and in my opinion looked the best. During these years, the CBR won the 600cc shootout pretty much across the board. It was only in 2009 where the emission regulations forced Honda to choke up their bike a little bit, which caused a significant loss in top-end power, did the CBR600RR start losing the shootouts. And this has been pretty much the story with the engine all the way up to 2020. And in 2013, Honda updated their 600RR with no new engine, but instead they went ahead and gave it a new facelift and some Showa piston forks. The forks were a nice update, but everything else was just the aesthetics, and in my opinion, that was even a step back because I believe the 08 model looked much better. And now it's about to be 2021 and Honda announced their all-new CBR600RR, and today we are going to be diving into what this bike is and my thoughts about the bike. So for starters, let's just take a look at the aesthetics of the bike and discuss these before getting into the specifications. First off, I'm going to say this right here, right now, I hated the previous generation 600RR looks. However, this new generation looks far improved in my opinion. My favorite part of this bike is the front end. It looks aggressive and I believe it flows very well with the rest of the bike. I also really like the fuel tank, which will hopefully be a plastic cover like the previous generations. I like the wheels and the side fairings as well. Also, the tail section looks great too. I like how Honda kept the little vents, and to my surprise, Honda also kept the undertail exhaust as well, which I did not see coming. Also, I have to address the elephant in the room here, and that's the winglets. I'll admit that they've been sort of growing on me in terms of looks, and Honda does claim that the new 600RR will be the most aerodynamic 600 in the class, and Honda also claims that these winglets will provide genuine downforce and improve stability under acceleration and on corner entry. Now, my major issue with the winglets is because they are there, Honda had to move the turn signals up by the headlights. Now, why didn't Honda just put these turn signals in the mirrors like they do for their Fireblade and Interceptor? It just seems like a bad design choice in my opinion. I'm not sure how much money they saved by doing it like this, but Honda, if you're listening, just get rid of these ridiculous stocks and put the turn signals in the mirrors like your other bikes. Now, moving away from the aesthetics, let's dive into some of the changes. And my favorite change is the new instrument cluster, featuring a full TFT display which looks very similar to the Fireblades. The speedometer is digital with a wraparound tachometer, also a power mode indicator, a clock, and would you finally look at that, a gear indicator. Finally, yes Honda, good job. However, it comes at the expense of the fuel gauge as I no longer see that on the gauge there. Hopefully it's somewhere hidden, but I would say that Honda's probably gotten rid of their fuel gauge, which is a shame. I'll never understand why manufacturers refuse to give us fuel gauges, but either way it's not a big deal. I'd rather have a gear indicator than a fuel gauge anyway, but that's still disappointing. Now, these changes also include a whole new suite of electronics. These electronics include HSTC, which is Honda's traction control system, multiple power modes, an optional up and down quick shifter, cornering ABS, wheelie control, and customizable engine brake and settings. Now, when I first heard of the new 600RR getting all new electronics, I'll admit that I scoffed at the idea. I figured it would just be some traction control system that you don't really need, in my opinion, on a 600 anyways. But I'll admit that I do see a need for cornering ABS and customizable engine braking. Both of those are very unique features that many bikes don't have, especially in the 600 class. I still think the traction control system isn't very necessary, and on the 600 a wheelie control system especially is not, but however it can't hurt to have these systems on regardless, they can only help. Another change is that Honda got rid of their standard throttle cables and moved to an electronic throttle, which if you guys don't know this already, I actually hate electronic throttles. However, I will save my judgment for it for if and when I actually get a chance to test ride this bike. Also, I understand that in order for the electronics to work, they pretty much had to move over to an electronic throttle. So as long as it's done right, I'm sure it'll be a worthy change. Honda also added LED lighting all around, an assist and slipper clutch, and an emergency stop system which flashes the hazard lights when you hit the brakes really hard. Now let's talk about the other elephant in the room, and that's the engine. This is essentially the exact same engine seen in the 2007 CBR600RR. Honda again has yet to replace this engine with a more modern one. That being said, Honda did do some internal changes for the 2021 model year. This include revised materials used in the camshaft, crankshaft, and valve springs, and the bike's peak power has moved 500 RPM up the rev range to hit a maximum of 121 horsepower at 14,000 RPM. However, we do see the loss of about a 1.5 foot-pound of torque. Now, although I would love to see Honda finally make a new modern engine for their 600, I cannot really fault them for continuing to use the older one. It's an insanely reliable engine and it makes fantastic power, so although it's been a bit disappointing, I do think it's a wise decision by Honda to focus their research and development on the chassis technology and bodywork rather than an already proven engine. Now, here is some bad news about the 600, and it's actually really bad. The new CBR600RR is going to increase its curb weight from the outgoing model's 410 pounds all the way to 428 pounds. Guys, that is 2 pounds lighter than the 2019 CBR1000RR. And in my opinion, that is just unacceptable in my books. A 600 should not be 2 pounds off of the weight of a 1000. I don't know what Honda was thinking with that, but regardless, let's move on. In addition to that, new CBR600RR does not feature any changes to the suspension or braking components, so this bike is going to be slower and less capable than the previous generation, unfortunately. The new CBR600RR will have an MSRP of $13,788 in Japan, which to compare to the ZX6R is $11,616 in Japan. Currently, the CBR600RR is only announced to be offered in the Asian markets. However, it will be making its way to the United States, guys. I can assure you of that, but I'm not so sure about the Euro market. See, this bike will pass the Euro 4 standards, but not the new stricter Euro 5 standards. So I'm sorry to inform my European viewers, but you may not ever see this bike at your dealerships. At least not this first year. Okay, so now my thoughts and opinions on the new 600RR. First of all, I love the looks. I think Honda did a fantastic job with that. Everything flows well, it looks aggressive, it looks modern, it does all the right things. I actually really like the winglets, the wheels, the undertail exhaust, and LED lighting. I do hate that Honda didn't do anything different with their turn signals though. Next time, Honda, please locate the turn signals in the mirrors like you do with your Fireblade. Now, with the electronics, I love that Honda has added in a ton of new tech features for the bike. Beyond my favorite change of this bike, as I mentioned earlier, is the TFT display with an in-screen gear indicator. Very useful and very modern looking. Also, the customizable engine brake and in-cornering ABS are two very useful features that I like to see on this bike. And Honda is offering an optional up and down quick shifter, which is again very useful and a nice feature to have. I also really love the idea of this flash system with the brakes. I feel like that is a great safety feature that most bikes should have. Also, it would be kind of fun to see it work in real time. I could see myself hitting the brakes hard just trying to get the emergency lights to flash, provided nobody is behind me, of course. And also, thank you Honda for finally adding a slipper clutch. I've been asking for that for years. The engine is the same, but Honda made a few tweaks to it to help boost some of the horsepower, although I'm going to wait for a dyno chart before I actually praise Honda for this power increase. I may just be skeptical, but I don't know how you take the exact same engine and choke it up with even more emission regulations, yet somehow make more horsepower because you changed a few materials inside the engine. I just don't see it making more power than the 07 to 08 years, especially when compared stock for stock, but we will see about that on the dyno charts. However, the biggest disappointment is definitely not the engine, it's the weight. Honda, you cannot make your 600 weigh 2 pounds less than your 1000. There's just no excuse for that. The point of a 600 is that it's a lighter bike than the bigger bikes. Well, that's just not the case with the CBR lineup anymore. Other than the cost, I don't see a single reason to get the CBR600RR over the new 1000 because the few things that make the 600 great and unique are missing from this model, and that's just a horrific disappointment. Overall, I'm not very impressed with the new 600RR. I like the design changes and I love the TFT display and gear indicator, and I do think the winglets are cool and that tech changes are nice to have, but at the expense of a 4% increase in curb weight, I just don't see how this bike is arguably better than the 07 to 08 model, and until Honda can actually make a 600 with an improved power to weight ratio, I'll still continue to crown the 07 to 08 models as the best CBR600RR ever made. Anyway, those are my thoughts and feelings of the new CBR600RR. I will not be getting one. I know some of you joked about that, but I'm keeping my 08. But I am excited to hear what your opinions of the bike are as well, so feel free to let me know down in the comment section below and I'll try to respond. I hope you all have a good one. Thanks for watching, take care, and bye-bye.
Sick news, put your little arrows out. Let me live my life, the one I'd better lead. All the blondes of fantasies, and we looked at them 11 ways. You said, look at me, I looked away, and you wrote the song I wanna play. Alright.